You're listening to Travel Tales with Fergal.
My name is Fergal O'Keefe and you're very welcome to the podcast. My first proper holiday was a Greek island hopping trip around the Cyclades Islands nearly 30 years ago with my then girlfriend and now wife Emer, who makes an appearance at the end of this episode. I've loved everything about Greece ever since, from the simple and delicious food to the open and friendly people to the ancient history and the spectacular beaches and the endless glorious sunshine and unforgettable sunsets. It's something of a travel cliche to say you've discovered a place that is like the Greece of 30 years ago, but perhaps I found that place on my recent trip this summer to the Halkidiki peninsula in the Macedonian region of northern Greece. By the way, try saying Halkidiki without it putting a smile on your face. I visited the three peninsulas of Halkidiki, Kassandra, Sithonia and Mount Athos, which is known as the Holy Mountain and the most holy place in the Orthodox Church. If you were to ask me to describe my ideal place, then it would be a small fishing village with a crescent-shaped soft white sand beach, protected by sheltered cove and surrounded by an amphitheatre of mountains. The village is small enough to have very few tours, but big enough to have a few fish restaurants where you don't mind going back to again and again. The last piece of the jigsaw would be accommodation, which ideally has a pool, but also a few minutes walk from the beach and the village. I don't ask for too much really. But I think I found that place at the very end of the stunning, isolated Sithonia Peninsula, and my new favourite place, which is called Porto Koufo Resort, situated around 2 hours drive from Thessaloniki airport. When I arrive at a new place, I immediately know when I get out of the car whether it has that magic feeling or not. It's a feeling of calmness and peace. And when I arrived at Porto Koufo Resort and got out of the car, the only sound I could hear was the constant chorus of cicadas calling out in the sweltering afternoon heat and the sound of the ocean nearby. But I knew this place has that magic. My family and I got to spend an ideally couple of days at the resort. We got to know the owners, Irene, Costas and their son Harry, who you'll hear from on the podcast today. But first we start with an interview with Alan Morrissey from Clare FM on why I love this place so much.
It is time for Travel Tales with Fergal O'Keefe. Delighted to say the man himself, the Ennis native, is back with us after a bit of a break. He was away for research purposes, all in the name of research. I swear he didn't enjoy himself one bit. How are you doing?
Yeah, it was great. I have to say, I've talked about it a few times here. So Thessaloniki and then Halkidiki region below it. And I have to say, yeah, it was unbelievable. It was our first actually family trip away since 2019 for 3 years, so it was magic. And I think it's amazing seeing actually over those 3 years the difference between, say, my kids. Like 3 years is a massive time, so all of a sudden the older guys are a little bit older and looking for different things than when they were very young the last time I was away. But yeah, it was a magical experience, I have to say.
Well, you get a near year-round heatwave in Greece, and Halkidiki is one of, if not the most popular holiday destinations in Greece. Fergal, before we go through the ins and outs of it, is it a place in Greece you'd been before, or had you been to Greece much in previous years?
Yeah, so I've been to Greece a couple of times. I think I've been there 4 times now at this stage. And one of our last family holidays actually was over in the Peloponnese region, which is the west coast of the mainland. And it's absolutely amazing. So I was kind of wondering, would it live up to that? And it did, actually. So this area, I've said it before, there's something I always do when every year I look out for new flights with Ryanair and Aer Lingus to see new routes. And it's a good tip, because if you pick those new routes, often because they're new, they're not as popular, and the airlines discount the flights to encourage people to go to that area. So it's always a great way of getting a deal. I flew into Thessaloniki. It is quite developed. and the area, it really does have something for all price brackets, for all ages. So I would really recommend the whole area of Halkidiki.
The Halkidiki peninsulas, Fergal. Now, my only trip to Greece was to Crete, so I have no experience of the mainland. Can you tell us a bit about the three peninsulas and the Halkidiki region, what it's like?
So it's famous because it's got three peninsulas that stick out from the mainland, or like three fingers. And it's funny because they're like three very different places. So like the first one's called Kassandra, which is kind of buzzy towns and got these huge nightclubs that would give Ibiza a run for its money. Then the middle one is called Sithonia, which has got lovely little villages and amazing very quiet, secluded beaches. And then the third one is a very famous place called Mount Athos, which is the only independent monastic state in the world. So it's an independent state for over 1,000 years. So the line I heard by several people while I was there was like, you go to the first one to find a wife, then you go to the second one when you're with your wife, and then you go to the third one to get away from your wife. So that was the line that I heard several times. So it's amazing, the variety. So that third peninsula, not many people actually go that area because most of it is closed off, and you can only enter sort of the monastic area through visa and by sea. But I stayed in a town that you can on the peninsula. So for history buffs and people like that, it's amazing. So it's got something. It's got the buzzy area, Kassandra, the Sithonia, the quieter area, and then Mount Athos, which is like a unique place, which is very famous. So it really does have something for everyone. When I think of Greece and what I love about Greece so much, for me it's like a little tiny beach or a little tiny town, maybe a little fishing town, so that you can get fresh fish from the boats. It's got a beach. It's a little alcove harbour area surrounded by mountains, and this place is exactly that. And I was hoping when I booked it that that's what it would be, but it was everything that I hoped it to be. And so I went down, the middle, this middle peninsula. It's the quietest one with the most beautiful beaches and the least developed, and that's why I loved it. But the area that I went to was at the very end of it, in a place called Porto Koufo, which is this amazing little tiny village. And I have to say that I would recommend it to anyone. It's one of the nicest places I've ever stayed in. If you like that, like what I love is like a little quiet village, and like there was like 4 restaurants all together, and you're happy to go. The food is so good that you're happy to go back night after night. And the people, you get to know the people in the village, like you go, you get your coffee in the morning to what we used to do every morning is go for a swim in the beach. And then there was like a little hut beside the beach where we'd get a coffee and donuts, massive donuts in Greece, I have to say. And actually it was funny because the guy, like he'd have like 8 donuts for the whole day, but there was 6 of us. So we saw the first morning, I took all the donuts. He was kind of scratching his head because the whole supply was gone. So but next day he had more donuts ready for us. But it really was a spectacular place. And the place that we stayed in, I have to recommend, is called Porto Koufo Resort. And it really is one of the nicest places that I ever stayed, because they're like apartments. So if people have family, it's a perfect spot, like, from the point of view of cost saving or whatever. There are these apartments around the pool area, and you're looking out onto this little harbour, the beach area. So it's like a short walk to the beach, but it also has a pool area and a little beach bar, or little pool bar beside it, but all these apartments on it, and it's absolutely amazing. What I love going to these sort of places is that, it was a husband and wife team, and actually their son and daughter worked there as well. And you kind of got to know them while I was there for a couple of days. I got to know the family, and then you also get the recommendations of all the places to go to around there. And again, for me, like the ideal situation is you're staying somewhere where you're quite happy. Even if you spent the day there, you're happy. Then you go off on little trips in the afternoon when it gets less hot, and there's some gorgeous little, as many beaches. You could literally spend the year just in that one spot and going off to beaches. But there were really cool little beaches all within 10 minutes drive of this village. But there was other, like say the next town, Tirana, was was originally the first capital in ancient times of Greece, and was a famous war there with the Persians. And beside that, there was like a great bar called Ethnic, a beach bar that was kind of guy had lived in Brazil. He came back, so it's that Brazilian style. So we used to go there in the evening for food, and so you can imagine what it was like. Unbelievable, I have to say. So it's called Porto Koufo Resort. But I would really, if people are interested in a quieter holiday, it's say a 2-hour drive from Thessaloniki down there. But if you like lovely beaches and a quiet place and food, I think that's the spot. I would so recommend it.
Lovely. Yeah, it sounds great. And I'm very curious and intrigued about the last of the fingers of the peninsulas, Mount Athos. You said it was the only independent monastic state in the world. So tell us a bit about what you saw when you were there.
Yeah, so it's an amazing place, and as Constance, the place I was saying in Porto Koufo he called it like a cosmic city. And so the place I went to was called Uranopoli, and it's sort of the administrative centre. So it's on the peninsula. It's the last place you go, and if you drive like I did it, I drove out to an old monastery that was ruined and an old Frankish fort, and right beside that was like a wall with barbed wire, and saying no one can enter. So the only way you can enter this peninsula, Mount Athos, is by sea. And still, so I got a boat tour. You can get boat tours up and down it, but you still have to be 500 meters off the coast, and no one can fish bar the monks. So it's a monastic state, and it's an old Byzantine monastic state that's over 1,000 years old, and would be considered the holiest site in the Greek Orthodox and in the Orthodox Church. And within this peninsula, there's 20 monasteries. You know them if you saw the pictures. There are these old monasteries up on because it's a very mountainous region, and these old huge monasteries built onto the mountain edges. So it's very atmospheric and amazing. Like there's one Russian, the biggest one is actually Russian, and Putin is a big fan. He's been there a few times, and Prince Charles has been there a few times. I don't know if they let him back
now.
Well, do you know what? It's a funny because there is the Russian one, but the official wine of the Kremlin comes from there. Putin only drinks the wine from Mount Athos, and so there's 17 Greek ones, but it's amazing. And this place, Uranopoli, where you're staying, so atmospheric, because I was staying at another great hotel called Xenia Uranopoli, which was the edge of town, and a little harbour where the boats would come in. So this is where the monks would go for to get stuff, and you'd see these little boats with the monks, and the monks are still wearing Byzantine black robes down to their feet and little caps and big long grey beards. So it's so atmospheric. It kind of reminded me the boats would come in and the front would fall down, for the cars to go off. So it kind of reminded me a bit like D-Day, but it was like a monastic D-Day, because it was like medieval monks coming off instead of soldiers. But it was amazing and atmospheric, I have to say, And so I would really recommend that place. And there's islands off of that, with a 10-minute ferry, which you can visit as well. And at that stage of the holiday, we didn't even go to the island, because I was kind of going, there's only so many amazing beaches that you can see,
It got to the stage where you were actually sick of amazing beaches. That's when you've had a great holiday.
Exactly, that's peak. That's for me, because I love traveling non-stop. So by the time we got there, we spent the last 3 days there, and I didn't use the car, and that's when I complete content, when I'm just I'm going to stay on this little beach and just walk up to the town, so it was perfect.
For people listening who haven't been, and they like what the sound, what they're hearing about Halkidiki, Fergal, how long ideally would you recommend people go for holiday there, given all that you described? Is it something that kind of a 10-day holiday would suffice, or a week? Or?
Yeah. So I would say, see, that's the beauty of this place. You could actually, you could fly into Thessaloniki, and if you're willing, 2-hour drives, you could actually just go down to Porto Koufo if you wanted for a few days, or another place we stayed called Vulvaru, which was lovely. That's kind of an hour from the airport. Or you could go to if you like your traditional Algarve type holiday, or Costa del Sol, you could go to Kassandra, and there's loads of towns there, and that's just an hour from the airport. And there's loads of towns. There's famous hotels, Sani Beach Resort, 5-star down to 1-star. It's full of towns with pubs and restaurants and nightclubs. So if you want, you could do a week there if you wanted. So it really, it actually is perfect from that point of view. So you could go for a few days, or ideally for 2 weeks. I mean, I was unusual because I did the 3 peninsulas, and I went to the, most people I would say would probably just do one, but I would go, if you love the quiet, go to Sithonia. If you love the, the action and the crack in the type of holiday, it's Kassandra. And if you want something very different, Orthodox with the peninsula. So that's the beauty of it. If you're, I mean, just say Orthodox to the airport, that was a 2-hour drive, beautiful drive over the mountains. So, like a week to 2 weeks would be perfect for that place. So now you're going to hear a clip I recorded at Porto Koufo Resort with Kostas, who is one of the owners of that resort, where we talk about the history of the place, a bit about the town, about the area, about the Halkidiki province. So now let's hear from Kostas. So the first question I have to ask you is the sound that everyone can hear in the background. What is that?
The sound are the crickets. It's a sign of heat. When the crickets are singing, that means we have more than 33 degrees. Okay. And if the cricket sings at night, that means that next day will be very hot.
Exactly. So we're in Porto Koufo, in your lovely property beside the pool, looking out onto the sea. How long have you been here?
I've been here 40 years, practically 80% of my life. My father bought it in 1979. And it became a camping in the early 80s. And it worked as a camping until 1991, when the Yugoslavian war started and the borders closed. Therefore, there was no more tourism from.
Of course, because we're northern
Europe.
We're northern Greece, so a lot of the tourists come from the Balkans.
Exactly.
Because they can travel by land.
Exactly.
How many apartments are here for people to rent?
There are 7 apartments and 3 bungalows.
And they're all different sizes, aren't they? For different sizes.
5 of them are 90 square meters.
Wow.
Another 2 are quite bigger, and the bungalows are smaller.
And we're literally, because I tried it yesterday, like 2-minute walk to the beach. So we're in Sithonia, the middle of the 3 peninsulas, or the 3 fingers of Halkidiki. How would you describe Sithonia?
Sithonia is still like an island. It's a virgin place.
Yeah.
And we can still see the surrounding as it used to be 20 or 30 years ago. A lot of beautiful crystal beaches with different colors and different sands. Seeing Mount Athos from one side, Kassandra from the other. The place here that we have, Koufos, has the same name for 3,000 years. Thucydides mentioned Koufos in his scripts. And Koufos means deaf. Because the winds at that time could not enter the port, therefore the name became Koufos. And it's the deaf port, in a simple translation. But the fact that the place keeps its name for 3,000 years make a strong point.
And I love that, and obviously Greek with its millennia of history, but you can feel it here. Like even you were talking about, like the port has got a little entrance and it can't be seen from the sea. And when the Persians were coming, they couldn't see it. Is that right?
Yeah, and the Greeks were hiding in that port. The Persians had set anchor in Toroni Bay, which is a 5-kilometer sandy beach, so that they could unload. But a heavy storm and the Greeks coming from behind in the correct side of the weather set on fire the whole fleet. The boats were very big, could not maneuver. So that was the first attempt of the huge Persian army that was destroyed from less than 50 Greek wooden boats.
And then, you go all the way to the Second World War, and famously the German U-boats used to hide out here?
Yes, it was a safe haven of the German U-boats during...
And why was that? Because the port...
The port is the deepest port in the Mediterranean. Not the biggest, but the deepest. It's 80 meters deep, and it was very, very well adapted for the U-boats. Toroni, in the other hand, which is just the next bay, was the first capital of Greece when Philip, the dad of great Alexander, united Greece by bribery and force. And they were selling timber to the Athenians in order to make their fleet. So Toroni was actually the first capital of Greece, which is here where we stand.
Oh, it's like just a couple of minutes away.
Meaning that Bucephalus and Great Alexander was passing by here by the port to see what was going on.
And did I read somewhere it was Alexander's mother? Is she buried where she's?
Well, Ibiza is just a few kilometers from here.
Yeah. And actually, you told me a great line, which I experienced myself, is the three fingers, or the difference between the three.
Yeah. Or, there is a story that we say here that when you're young and you're trying to find a mate, then you go to Kassandra because, there are all the clubs and the dancing areas, etc. If you have a mate and you want to have a quiet time, then you come to Sithonia. And if for any reasons, God forbid, the mate is gone, then you go to Mount Athos to pray. So we can have all social life here in the three fingers.
Exactly. And can you just tell people about Mount Athos, because it is a mythical place, really, isn't it? It's so famous in Greek Orthodox Church and in history. It's a separate state, is it?
It is a separate state. We all have to get a visa in order to go to Mount Athos. And it is a monk community. They live by their rules. They work all day. And it's dedicated to Virgin Mary. That's why no other woman cannot set foot on Mount Athos.
Even animals?
Not even animals that they can control. Cats and chickens they cannot control. But you cannot have a female dog in Mount Athos or a female donkey.
And it's just and the monks, they have their own vineyard, they do their own fishing rights around it.
Of course, they are autonomous. And imagine that on any single day in summer, they feed more than 50,000 people, that they are the guests of the monasteries.
Wow.
So this, a logistic by itself, is a huge task.
Wow. And I was just reading about it actually, like Putin is a big fan. So there's different churches.
Not only, because it's the Russian monastery, is the Serbian monastery.
Yes.
There are 24 monasteries. And it's all the Orthodox world, it's like all the Orthodox world has landed in Mount Athos somehow. That's why not only that, Charles is a frequent visitor.
Yeah, Prince
of
Charles.
Vatopedi.
Yeah.
And all the great leaders that are Christian, especially Orthodox Christian, need to pass some time in Mount Athos.
And even yesterday I saw it, and it does, like, it's beautiful, kind of like a cone, like Mount Everest, kind of the way it goes up, isn't it? And you described
seeing the sunrise coming up from the mountain's top.
And
it's majestic.
It moves up the mountain, does it?
Exactly.
Wow. And we were like talking yesterday about Uranopoli, where I'm going to go, and that's the sort of where the boats, you could only go by boat. The pilgrim passes, they go into pilgrim office there in Uranopoli, but you described it as cosmic.
Yeah, Uranopoli is not a part of Mount Athos as the monk society. It's the last big city that you can get your necessary stuff in order to go on the pilgrim 2-4 days, 1 week, how many for each one. So it is a cosmic place. I mean, you can have a drink as well.
Yeah. The monks go for an hour.
There are restaurants, etc. The monks don't go
out.
No. There is a delegation that goes out. And now imagine that during COVID, the rules were very strict. Nobody came in or out for 2 years. So now they just reopened, let's say, the doors for the pilgrim. And
have you been there? Have you ever?
I've been many times.
So you have to get a passport, or what do you call it?
You have to get a visa.
Visa.
It's very cheap, but it is the bureaucracy that you have to pass, because a certain monastery needs to take care of you, feed you and give you a room, and the cost is only €20 for 4 days. So it's not
but it takes months.
Thing. But you need to make an early reservation, like 6 months earlier. The energy of the place is unique. I've never set foot on any other place that has this kind of energy. The scenery is a little bit medieval, with all the monasteries and the trees and how it used to be.
Yeah.
But also, I believe the praying in the monastery is starting at 4:30 and all the sacred stuff of Orthodox Church, like the bone of saints, etc., they are there, create this unique atmosphere.
Like it was part of the Byzantine Empire. They granted the land, I think it was at the 9th century. So it's amazing, you know, like so it's over 1,000 years.
And before that, in ancient Greek time, it used to be temples and, how can I say, a holy place.
Okay.
So it was a holy place even before Christ.
Okay.
A lot of the monasteries over there are built on top of Greek ruins of all the temples.
And are you Orthodox? Most Greeks. So, and I noticed that you have a little chapel here. Is that like? And my kids are fascinated by how there's chapels everywhere.
Yeah, it's Constantine and Helen, and it's kind of tradition. If you have a big place, big enough to have a chapel, then you have a chapel as well.
Okay, it's lovely. I love it. So here, Sithonia, as you say, you know, I've been to, like I say, the islands and to Peloponnese, but for me, it's perfection because it's like a little beach in a cove with a beautiful house. And I felt the peaceful feeling. So Sithonia has that, like it's got some amazing. Could you tell us about a couple of the what beaches would you recommend? Because Sithonia is some of the best in all of Greece.
The thing is that you can choose in a very small distance, between 10 or 12 kilometers. You can have 4 or 5 very big beaches with beach bars and chaiselong and everything. But at the same distance, 10, 12 kilometers on the other side, you can find remote places that you can have 200 meters beach or 500 meters beach that you can be practically alone. And there are like 48 in a distance of 12 kilometers.
48 beaches?
48 different places.
Wow.
So it's if you have this inquiry mind, you can search and find wonders in Sithonia.
Yeah. And we went to Ethnic, which is a beach bar directly. So 13 minutes from this direction was Ethnic, which is a really cool, like quiet beach, but a cool beach bar. And then 13 minutes exactly in the opposite direction was Kalamitsi, which is a little town another little town on a beach with lots of restaurants, tavernas right on the beach. So just gorgeous. And then here, like directly down from here, you walk down, there's like 4 beautiful tavernas with the beach and those little shops.
This is the beauty of Sithonia, because it's a walking distance usually to go to the sea. And that's highly appreciated for when you live in an apartment, you know, or in a car all day long during winter. You need to just walk to the beach and dive in.
And this place, like Porto Koufo, it just feels a little bit different than anywhere else that I've seen. So what do you think? Why is this place a little bit different?
You know, we are a U if we were a letter, and it's covered with stones. This, in music, we call it diapason. You know how they used to tune in the old times before electronics. I believe it has absorbed the energy of the beauty. The stones have absorbed the energy of beautiful times that we spent here. And this can actually be transmitted. It is appreciated by the people that they come here.
Exactly.
It's just a thinking.
No, you know, it definitely has it. And you've described it perfectly, because when we arrived and got out of the car, I just felt a calm, you know, especially after coming from Kassandra and the nightclubs, which the kids love.
That's our goal. That's our goal, to have Le Village Gaulois here inside our premises.
Yeah.
You just need to have this searching, adventurous mind.
Now we're going to hear from Harry, who is Costa's son, and he's going to talk about the first peninsula, Kassandra, which is the more lively part of the Halkidiki province. So now get to hear from Harry. What age are you?
I'm 18 years old, just
I want to ask you about Kassandra. So Kassandra is the action spot of the 3 peninsulas. Why is that? What is it got?
Kassandra, first and foremost, is closer to Thessaloniki, so it's easier for younger people who don't have licenses, who don't want to take the bus to go. And from always it was full of clubs. Kalithea, which is like an area in Kassandra. There are like 10-20 clubs, massive clubs. Yes.
Purpose-built.
Yes, or purpose-built massive clubs. And my friends, me and many other people very usually go there. And it's like an attraction that attracts many people to Kassandra, and that's why they love it.
What towns would you recommend for people if they wanted to go to Kassandra for the action?
Well, definitely as I said, Kalithea. But apart from Kalithea, Chanioti and Pevkochori are also amazing places. I just came back from Pevkochori 2 days ago. It was amazing because it's still a very small town, but it has many things to do. There are enough clubs so you can have fun, not as big as Pearl of course, but big enough to have fun. Many tavernas, you're very close to the sea, so it's pretty amazing to be honest, yeah. So Chanioti, Pevkochori and Kalithea, there are 3 musts you should go.
Finally, we're going to hear Emer for the first time, my lovely wife, doing a very quick interview with Irene talking about Greece and why Porto Koufo Resort is so special and why we love that place so much.
So Rennie, we've absolutely loved our time in your gorgeous venue. It's very special here. But you were telling me that you were born in Athens and you spent the earlier part of your life in Athens. So did you holiday around there?
Yes, we used to, in the beginning we used to go to the Cycladic Islands, basically, like most Athenians, you know. It was all the big pack, like Mykonos, Santorini, Sifnos, whatever. We love that. It's a part of Greece which is really amazing, and everybody, you know, whenever you say Greece, everybody thinks of the islands primarily. But this place here was a family vacation place for my husband's family, basically. And the thing is that mainland is not so known abroad. Everybody, you know, thinks of the islands. Nobody actually knows how many beautiful places there are in Greece mainland. And what we really loved about this place was the fact that it's so green. You know, the scenery is amazing. It's not dry. There are the pine trees that go all the way down to the beach, you know. There are nice hikes that you can take up on the hills. It's really nice. And of course, I'm not going to talk about, you know, the beaches. Everybody knows that. But still, there are places that are not developed, and, you know, you're not surrounded by people everywhere you go. It's not so crowded. You still find a place to put down your towel, you know, and sit on the beach. You don't have to be in a beach bar or something like that, which is important.
And obviously we love the islands, but for us this is something we probably could do repeatedly, because it's like, you know, shortish flight from Dublin, and then within 2 hours you're here in this beautiful place.
I hope you enjoyed that episode, and thanks especially to Irene and Costas and Harry in the Porto Koufo Resort. Check out details in the podcast here for their website. I cannot recommend that place enough. Finally, keep a listen out this autumn for more episodes and more specials. Take care and safe travels.
Travel Tales with Fergal.